Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to Muslimahs in Motion, Professional Pursuits, where we celebrate the achievements of young Muslim women in tech, entrepreneurship, and beyond. In this episode, we are going to explore the I.M.A.N framework. This is something I keep in mind whenever I pursue a new project or a new opportunity, and I feel like sharing this because I feel like it's something that could be useful for all of us, inshallah. So today we will break down the I.M.A.N framework and essentially what it means, some examples of scenarios where it might apply to you, and some techniques so you can apply it in your own life. All right, let's get to it. So what is the I.M.A.N framework? I.M.A.N. So this stands for intention, mindfulness, advocacy, and nurturing. This framework is designed to help Muslim career women and men protect their boundaries and pursue what is important to them. Now, why did I come up with this? I think it's important to have a metric or a measurable way to determine what benefits you, whether it's a job, organization, project. You actually want to make sure it aligns with your personal boundaries and your goals, right? So why are we doing any of this? At the end of the day, well, first things first, we got to do stuff to please our Lord, right? And how do you do that? I mean, you respect yourself, respect your boundaries, and make sure you're doing things in accordance with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're going to walk through how it might apply to you personally and how you can go ahead and apply to your own lifestyle. So let's walk through each step of the framework. So let's start with I. Intention. So we want to set clear and purposeful intentions. So we want to define what our career goals are. You can't, improve if you don't know where you're going or what your goals are, right? How are you supposed to measure your improvement when you don't know what you want to improve? So we got to make sure they align with your faith and values. So whether it's short-term or long-term goals, they got to reflect your personal and professional goals and aspirations. It's important to have both short and long-term goals because we will have long-term goals, and I'm speaking to myself. I'll have long-term goals, but because I don't have any short-term goals to hold myself accountable, I'll just kind of get lost in the sauce until 6 months later, I'm like, oh, well, why didn't I improve as much as I wanted to? Well, maybe it's because in the short term, I wasn't really measuring anything. And honestly, I didn't know what the heck was going on. So that's kind of why nothing happened, right? So you got to have the short-term goals to kind of, break it down and help you see, okay, for example, let's say you want to build an app. That's a very big goal. But what you can do is try to break it down by functionality or break it down by the pages you want. Chop it up. Make it digestible so it's not just this. It's like fire hose, right? The fire hose analogy. You don't want to drown trying to drink from a fire hose. You want to funnel the fire hose up until a little gardening hose, and that's a little more digestible. You know what I mean? All right. So defining our purpose. Then we, of course, have to have the correct spiritual intentions. So you got to begin each day and frankly, maybe even each task with your clear niyyah to serve Allah through your work. And when you choose to do this, I promise you, it becomes a lot easier because you know why you're doing it. Allah knows you're doing it for Him, so He makes it easier for you, inshallah. And not only that, it helps you maintain that focus and then also make sure that whatever you're doing is for His sake and it aligns with your goals ultimately, right? It's easy to get lost in the sauce when a lot of things are happening and, maybe you want to pursue this one thing, but you're not sure if it really aligns with your beliefs or what you're supposed to be doing. You can catch yourself a lot quicker if you try to observe the smaller things, right? Because things eventually snowball. If you start doing little things here and there that kind of compromise on your values, you're going to be looking at yourself 6 months to a year later and be like, what am I doing? How did I get here? Why doesn't this feel right? If you look at what you're doing at the smallest unit, it's going to be a lot easier to check yourself and be like, hey, this doesn't feel right. So let me just inch away and try something else before, I end up not even liking what I do. That's how you end up not even liking what you do every day because you're just compromising on what you actually like and what you actually believe in little by little by little till one day you looking around, you don't even recognize where you're at. And with that being said, you want to reassess yourself regularly, right? So like I said, small ways you can keep yourself accountable. Every day you wake up, what are my goals for the day? How am I going to get things done? And why am I doing this? You got to reassess. And when you do that, you make sure that they remain relevant and they remain aligned with your goals. So for example, right? Before I started working, one of the first things I was inquired about, or one of the things I was inquired about a lot, was my hijab. Like, was I going to be nervous being in a corporate setting and wearing it, being visibly Muslim, and not only just Muslim, but a Black woman too, being pretty much predictably, and I was the only Black Muslim woman in my department. And for was I scared, right? I'm not gonna lie. It's nerve-wracking thinking about being the only person in anything, right? So it's just like, oh, you don't know what to expect. So yeah, nervousness was there. Other people asking, do you feel like the hijab is like a blocker or a hindrance to my career? I didn't really think. Honestly, my mentality was like, whatever is meant to happen is going to happen. It doesn't really matter what I do. Well, let me not say that. Obviously, there are things in my control, right? But wearing a hijab is what I honestly feel like I need to do. If something happens to me because of that, then maybe that just means that's not the environment for me, right? So that's kind of the mindset I had going in. And also deep down inside, like with all the du'as and the istikhara I made, even leading up to this job, I feel like, I don't know, I didn't feel like that fear, like just dread, like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, just crying. I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing if you do. I'm just saying, like, alhamdulillah, like, I was pretty firm. And even there were some well-meaning adults in my life that before I started working, they were even asking me, oh, like, maybe if you want to wear the hijab a little differently, I don't know, just a little more, whatever. And I was looking at them and I said, okay, no, I will not be doing that. And I know that they honestly meant well and like they were just like looking out for me. But at the end of the day, I knew that I was doing this for a reason, not just to make a bunch of money and not just to give back, but also to represent and show people that look like me can show up, do my job. And not only that, but, like do really, 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 really good at it. Trying to think of like a good way to say that. But like, yeah, just kick butt. You know what I mean? And so, funny thing about that is, year after I started my job, I actually won like a company-wide quarterly award. And with that, my Black Muslim hijabi face was plastered all over the screens of the company. So, I was the only woman, the only Black person, and the only Muslim/hijabi person that even won that quarter. So the lesson here is that I'm very glad I did not compromise diddly squat, because now people can literally wake up, go to the office and see my face. And it really wasn't about seeing my face like, oh, I want to win this because whatever. I wasn't even thinking about winning it. I was just thinking about doing my job, right? It wasn't until like I got a couple of emails that I actually got nominated for the award, because the efforts and the work I did, not only that I did, but like the extra things that I did, which was like speaking at panels and participating in like company growth activities and just overall just doing above and beyond stuff, right? So long story short about that is that people can now look and see, oh, hey, this is this person and they look like that. And look, they're doing their thing. And, maybe they're not looking at that. Maybe they're just saying, oh, a person. And that's great. But like also, it's not just for me. It's for other people who look like too. And they're wondering, even if I do get the job, who's to say like I'll do well? Who's to say I'll have a support system? Who's to say I'll, whatever. Yeah, we can do it. So yeah, I'm glad I kind of stayed 10 toes down. You know what I mean? But yeah. So how can one make sure their intentions are right before like starting a project, job, whatever? I would recommend like mindfulness. Like before you do anything in life, honestly, you got to think about what you're doing. You can't just be walking around just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. You got to think about what you're doing and why, right? So for example, for my job, I know why I was doing it. I wasn't just doing it, again, just to make a bunch of money. I was doing it for the little me who really wanted to be a software engineer when I was a kid, who really wanted to contribute to society, who I'm doing it for people who look like me, who want to get into the space and are unsure or nervous about, can I really be myself and still show up and work and do this thing, right? I think about those things a lot. And yeah, that's why I wake up and do my job, even when it's hard and even when I'm frustrated with maybe a tech story that is very difficult and it has a bunch of bugs and everything's keep crashing. And I really want to like set my computer on fire, but I can't do that, right? Because first of all, probably would not have that job very long. Second of all, without having that job, how am I supposed to show people I can do the things that I want to do? You know what I mean? And I want to do them because I want to do big things. And I can also show people that you can do big things too. It's like whenever people look at me and they're like, oh man, what you're doing is so hard. I could never do that. I literally stop them and I'm like, yes, you can. You can definitely do it. I feel like anybody can do it. It's just practice. It's like math. Nobody really likes math because everybody thinks it's really hard. And honestly, I used to love math, but when I went to undergrad, I started to dislike math more and more, especially like discrete math and all those horrible maths. But yeah, I realized it's also just practice. Like all of these things are just practice and just reading a lot. It seems easier. Like, okay, whenever you like something, it always seems easier, right? But it isn't, how do I say this, right? I guess like for people who are big nerds like me, it seems like we're just making it look very easy or whatever. But I promise you, like, there are days that I'm just like, can I actually do this? Like, is this the limit of my intelligence or my knowledge? Because, like, sometimes I'm just over it. And also, that could be burnout, and that's on me. But at the same time, I'm saying that to say, like, we all experience it. Yes, of course, there are some people who are naturally inclined and been coding since they came out the womb. That's their business, right? That's great. But like in anything, there's always going to be prodigies or people who are just exceptionally good at stuff. But you can't let that stop you from trying. I think most people can honestly get away with, being in computer science or being in tech. Like, it's just a matter, again, of finding what you actually like and applying yourself. But anyways, I digress. Again, like when you wake up in the morning, setting intentions and all that, make sure you do your morning du'as, like your morning adhkars. So asking Allah, like putting barakah, please put some barakah in whatever I'm doing, and ask him to make you successful in this life and the next. So yeah, obviously after praying, Fajr and stuff, try to make some du'as before I get ready for the day. And yeah, one of the du'as I've been trying to implement in my life is putting barakah in my time and my work. Because sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but me personally, I feel like time just be flying and flying. And I feel so frustrated because I want to get all these things done and I can't because I, lo and behold, just run out of time. It's so frustrating, like really. It's one of my least favorite things. So when I started asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, please put barakah in my time. Please put barakah in what I'm doing. Please allow this to be good for your sake. The whole, like, time is just getting away from me, like, on a daily basis, it's calmed down a little bit. Also, I think I've done a better job of, I guess, setting my focus on certain things I want to work on for, like, quarterly or, like, monthly things. Like, rather than just trying to do a whole bunch of stuff and try to finish by the end of the day, or else I've been trying to determine, like, okay, what are my goals for today? What are the 3 things I really want to accomplish today, right? And then do those. And then I don't feel so poop about myself when the day is done and I didn't finish, like, the 10 billion things I had, but I finished the important ones, right? So I don't feel as, like, grimy and unaccomplished. So, yeah. Ask Allah to put barakah in what you're doing, and you'll start to see a difference, inshallah. Morning adhkars, again, yeah, to protect you just from nonsense people and nonsense things and just things in general, and just thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, And again, I emphasize this greatly. Please make sure whatever you're doing aligns with your beliefs. If the job that you really want, or let's not even say you really want it, let's say like the company is this really big conglomerate and they do really unethical things, which is like, yes, most of them. But like, let's say a specific company, for example, Caps Incorporated, there's a press release that stated that the CEO in his spare time likes to torture bunnies. Auzubillah. Or they just put toxic waste into like small town water supplies. I know these are very extreme, but like, bear with me. You're like, yeah, I know that they do toxic waste in the small town over there, and the CEO likes to kick bunnies around, but I really need this job, and it actually pays like pretty good. Listen, there will come a time in our life where money literally does not matter. And you're going to be sitting with yourself and being like, I wish I had just stuck to my guns. And it's hard in the moment. Obviously, you're desperate and you feel like, yeah, I really need this thing. But the thing is, when you make dua for something and you're trying to do things with your best intention at heart, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make it easy for you. Even though it might, side note, I think, like, it might not even be the easiest thing. But then you have to remember, like, when you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for good things and putting goodness in stuff, sometimes it's the hardship that brings you to the ease, right? And sometimes there's even ease in that hardship. So with all that being said, you know, even though it's not the easiest journey in the world, there's never been a hardship I've been through that I came out the other side and I'm like, oh, well, that wasn't worth it. That was just completely useless. And all of that meant nothing. Astaghfirullah. No, never. So you got to do stuff, even though it's hard to do the right thing. I promise you, you're going to feel so much better after, and you're never going to regret doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. All right. So let's move on to the next letter, M, mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness and presence. So, incorporating mindfulness in your daily work routine to enhance focus, reduce stress, and improve productivity. Okay, what does it mean? So, think about boundaries. Think about spiritual mindfulness. For example, taking, for those of us who have like screen/desk jobs, make sure you take those regular screen breaks, okay? Because you do not need to be sitting 8 hours at the screen looking at it and then your eyes feel fried by the end of the workday. Nobody needs that. Get some standing breaks, get some walking around breaks. And if you don't have the option of a standing desk, which I recommend to everyone, if you have a little home setup, home work at home, whatever, please get a standing desk. It makes a difference. And one of those standing mats, so then that way your feet don't hurt after like 15 minutes. Get one of those. It makes a difference. But yeah, if you don't have that, stand up, walk around, and most importantly, please go outside. It is so easy once you start working. All you do is be at home, go to work, and none of that time involves, you know, being outside where the earth and the grass is. You know, when they say touch grass, y'all need to actually be doing that. There's a reason why people say that. Because it's important to breathe the air and smell it and get exposed to that vitamin D from our beautiful sun that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides. Because you know what's going to happen if you don't do that? You're going to feel really lethargic all the time, kind of sad, and you're going to feel like a shell of yourself. Why am I saying these things? Because it's happened to me. So now I prioritize trying to be outside, even if it's being next to a window. For some reason, if I can't like just make the time to be outside, which you should, even if you're getting in your car and just spending like extra 5 minutes just to, you know, absorb the vibes of the outside. The birds are chirping, the sun is shining, the grass is moving in the wind. Just be mindful. Do that. Like, you can do it. You got to make time for things that are important, right? It's not that we don't really have the time, it's that we don't make the time. So even if it's 5 minutes, make the time, right? Sitting for 8 hours in one spot is just not good for nobody. And especially if you're just completely remote, you got to make the effort, because it's really easy to get into the habit and a routine of just kind of like lounging and being in or whatever. You got to make the routine to do it, because if you don't, it's really easy to just get stuck in this cycle. Stay hydrated, take care of yourself. If you're hungry, just listen to your body, right? Like, please don't ignore your body. If you're thirsty, please drink. If you're hungry, please eat. And most importantly, if you have to pee, please don't ignore that. Please go pee. Okay? You need to respect yourself. There's no point in ignoring your body just for the sake of 8 hours of work. Nobody asked you to do that. And in fact, yeah, life is too short to be doing that. Our bodies are an amana, a privilege, right? Allah gave us these bodies. We cannot be abusing them just because we want to get one task done. And again, one finger at you, three fingers at me. I had to work on that because it's really easy to just be focused and be like, oh, let me just write one more line or let me just do this thing. No, you need to get up. Okay. Thank you. And spiritual mindfulness. Okay. So you got to stay connected. So, for example, if it's Zohar time, Asr time, the first thing I think of as spiritual mindfulness is go on ahead and pray the salat. Okay. So alhamdulillah, I have a job and an occupation that kind of allows for that flexibility. Like alhamdulillah, I have a great boss that when it's time for me to pray or go to Jummah, he allows me to do that. We need to pray when it's time to pray. Allah gave us that privilege. We did not have to have jobs that allowed us to do that. So we need to thank him by taking those 5 to 10 minutes to thank him and pray, for the one who granted us the blessing of our jobs, the blessing of the risk, we got to thank him. 9 to 5, for example, Zuhr and Asr, those ones don't even take that long, right? So prioritize it, please, because that's the one thing, it's the first thing you're going to be asked about. So yeah, go on. And it's never really worth okay, if you have a meeting and you absolutely cannot get out of that meeting, that's understandable as long as you stay within the window of the prayer, obviously. But what you don't need to be doing is just intentionally delaying it just because you can. Okay. Nobody asked you to do that. Okay. So please keep that in mind, inshallah, because this thing is important. Do not get in the habit of doing that because these kinds of habits are kind of hard to break and you don't want to be getting those habits. And on top of that, taking a little break to pray, I feel like, again, it's just another way of keeping that mindfulness for yourself and respecting your body. Like, for example, if I'm stuck on a coding issue or a programming problem and something is just bothering me and I my brain feels like it's overheating and vibrating and I'm just tired, I'll go pray, come back, I say alhamdulillah, because I just feel like this coolness and this energy just washes over me. All the irritation and the itchiness is just gone. And I'm just thinking about, it's just me and Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just me and him. And I'm just praying. And for those 5 to 7 minutes, I'm not thinking about, this compilation error or this null pointer exception. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about Allah. And it helps. It really does. So don't think of it as oh, it's interrupting my workflow. No, if anything, it contributes to your workflow. My dad, one of the things, the advice he gave me, especially just programming in general, he's whenever you're stuck on something, sleep on it or just go take a walk, because our brains, they're not just active workings, they're constantly working. So what will happen is that your brain is thinking about, and this doesn't just apply to programming, by the way, this can apply to a lot of things. Your brain is working on the problem in the background. So by the time you wake up or by the time you come back and your brain was just kind of doing some background processing, you'll be like, oh, eureka. The answer is here in my brain. And that's happened to me before. So again, don't think of it as, okay, this is interrupting my brain process. Think of it as this is part of the process, and as it should be, because again, you should be kind of scheduling your life around Salah, not the other way around, because again, this is very important. So yeah. So if you have a mindfulness practice that you practice in your work life or your personal life, feel free to share that with me by clicking the link in the episode description. So you can actually send the pod a text and I'll pick a couple to share, inshallah, in a future episode. Message and data rates may apply. All right. A, advocacy. So advocating not just for yourself, but for others. So, okay, girl, what does that mean? Let me tell you. So self-advocacy, you confidently advocate for your needs and boundaries in the workplace. So, for example, negotiating flexible working hours, or requesting a prayer space or corner, or seeking opportunities for personal development. So, yeah, advocacy. It's a skill that many of us as minorities have had to pick up pretty early. in the workplace, this is pretty important and pretty invaluable. We have a right in the workplace to practice our religion freely, no matter what anybody tells you or tries to, passive aggressively convince you otherwise. We have constitutional rights not to be discriminated against due to our religion. For those of us who grew up here, we will learn about the Constitution and our rights and the right of religion and freedom of speech and all that stuff. But for those of us who are not so familiar, yeah, we have those rights. So don't let anybody try to bamboozle you into thinking you don't, because you do. For example, Title VII. Title VII prohibits employers from discriminating against employees or applicants based on religion and hiring, firing, and any other terms and conditions of employment. So yeah, nobody can hire or fire you based on you being Muslim, based on you wearing hijab, you having a beard, or you literally doing anything that has to do with your religion. They can only hire you or fire you based on your ability to do the job or not do the job. So if you ever feel like somebody has literally said, oh, I don't think, you're right culture fit or whatever, and you can actually prove that, like, for example, I've heard stories of sisters like getting interviews and being completely qualified. And as soon as they show up for the interview itself and they see they have hijab on them, they're just like, oop, this position's actually taken. Oop, actually, you're not qualified. Sorry. Come on. Really? And, some people are quite frank about it. And, alhamdulillah, some people are able to take the proper legal actions and get their bag because, yeah, you cannot, that's not okay, obviously. If you can do the job, why does it matter I have a scarf on my head? Exactly, it doesn't. So, just putting that out there, this is a true legal stipulation that people can actually be held accountable for. Another thing is reasonable accommodation. So, your employer is required to reasonably accommodate employees' religious practices, unless doing so would cause undue hardship, which really it shouldn't. For example, flexible work hours for prayer. Okay, Zohar time comes in, you tell your boss, hey, I need to go pray. You find an empty meeting room, you pray. That is not causing undue hardship on anybody. Now, you have a meeting with a very big stakeholder and it happens to coincide with the time of the prayer. I would not recommend saying to your boss, hey, I know we have this very multi-million-dollar deal and I have to show up to this meeting, but I need to pray. Now, that's not really obviously you have the right to pray, but you kind of want to make it as easy for them to say yes as possible and very hard for them to say no. So I wouldn't recommend that, but obviously after the meeting or before the meeting, if you can make time, find a quiet area for you to pray. And legally, your employer has to provide an area for you to pray. You shouldn't be praying, for example, in the warehouse, in the middle of the warehouse floor, while everybody's running around and doing warehouse stuff. No, your employer is legally obligated to give you a space, even if it's just an empty meeting room or somebody's empty office. You have that right to have that. And that's not causing undue hardship, especially if you bring your own prayer mat and you're just praying. All of us, alhamdulillah, we all know what prayer looks like. You just standing and doing the proper motions for 5 to 7 minutes. So don't let anybody try to convince you that, okay, what this is, this is just, no. It's not too much. It's not an inconvenience. You're not blocking anybody from doing anything. You're quiet. You're to yourself. You're just praying. Okay? So legally, they have to let you do that. Don't let anybody try to convince you again or bamboozle you into thinking you cannot, right? Another thing too, wearing a hijab or wearing a beard. For those of us who choose to do that, again, there is no scarf or no beard on this earth that is preventing anybody from doing any type of work. Even in some warehouse setting, unless you're literally sticking the scarf in the machinery, nobody is gonna tell you, oh, sorry, ma'am, you can't have that. It's a danger. Really? So with all the pins and the magnets and all the ties in the world, you can't allow me to tie it in a way that is not out the way. All right. Yeah, the answer is no. There is no. Yes, you can. You know what I mean? So yeah, again, you have the legal right, essentially, to have these things. So yeah, with that being said, if you need to go to Juma, Your employer is required by law to make reasonable accommodations for you to go to Juma. If you need a place to pray, your employer is required by law to make reasonable accommodations and provide a place for you to pray. If you need to take off time for Eid Salat, which honestly is kind of sad we have to do that in the first place. But anyways, that's a conversation for another time. Your employer is required by law to make a reasonable accommodations and let you take off time to go to Eid Salat. There are laws that protect us in this country, so we should never feel bad or afraid to stand up for ourselves. And this is in every job, by the way, not just corporate settings, every job. All right, cultural competence. Because when you're advocating for yourself, you gotta advocate for your others. And really, when you're advocating for others, it doesn't just mean others in your immediate proximity. It can also mean your community as well. What does that mean? Let me explain. So, as much as a lot of us don't want to or are very tired of being the token XYZ person, the token Black person, the token Muslim person, the token brown person, the tax we have to pay that comes with being a trailblazer and a ceiling breaker and a mover and a shaker. One of those taxes is telling people and educating people about like what's what really. And yeah, I'm sure your mouth is tired from explaining yourself over and over again. But again, that's a responsibility when we have the privilege to make a difference and, show up in these spaces, right? Islam is a religion that unfortunately is a huge victim of misinformation, especially in the West. So there's so much that people either don't really know about or just have the wrong idea in general. So if someone asks you a question, try your best not to come at them through like the lens of frustration or exasperation. You can look at it as almost like spreading dawah. You're doing the Ummah a service by properly informing people about our beautiful religion. And look, you're going to get rewarded for that, inshallah, Yawm al-Qiyamah. You're going to collect them rewards by informing people because you never know like what your information and what you educating people might bring to others. You know what I mean? But yeah, I've developed a knack for detecting if people are if they're asking questions out of malice or ignorance rather than just like genuinely wanting to learn. For example, like whenever somebody wants to learn something from me, they come from a place of humility, subhanAllah. Like they'll be like, oh, like, I'm really sorry if this is a dumb question, or I'm sorry if this is weird, but I just have a question about this. I'll be like, oh yeah, of course. Like, please never be afraid to ask me a question because that's why I'm here. I want you to learn. I will never be upset about answering any genuine questions people might have, like whether it's about hijab or Islam in general. I've gotten a bunch of questions. And then there's people who, for example, I'll be in an elevator with, they'll ask things like, so how come you have to wear that thing on your head? All right, buddy. Just because you said that, I'm not going to say nothing. It's about the tone. It's about like what you're asking. It's about like the look on their face. Yeah, you obviously are not here to learn nothing. You're here to tick me off. So yeah, I'm not giving you the satisfaction of doing that. The people who trust you enough to ask questions, like the genuine people, should not be punished for other people's ignorance. So if we write off everyone who wants to just learn, are we no better than the ones who just write us all off? Something to think about. All right, last one. N, the N in I.M.A.N. N is for nurturing. Nurture your growth and well-being. So what does that mean? Personal development. So invest in your learning, invest in self-development. Go to workshops, get that higher education, and develop skills that enhance your professional and personal life. So please do not be afraid to learn. For our girlies who went to undergrad and whatnot, or you went to some kind of schooling, boot camp, whatever, the learning does not end there. You are going to be learning. It doesn't matter if it's just tech or software engineering. In any job, if you want to be the best or you want to be really good at what you're doing, you got to keep learning. Ask your employer or your HR people if they have some kind of subsidies to take courses. Like, for example, like at my job, we have this Udemy. Like it's covered by our job. So they just allow us to learn as much as we can. And it's free. We don't have to pay out of pocket for nothing. which is cool, honestly, because I was a huge Udemy stan way back in the day before people even knew what Unity, excuse me, I love Unity too, but Udemy was. My dad put me on. He was like, learn these frameworks on Udemy. You only got to pay $12 for the class. I was like, I mean, this is just a smorgasbord of information. I was just obsessed. And not even 12, actually. At the time, they were doing like $7. So I would just be buying courses, buying this thing. I'd be like, oh, game development, this thing, let me buy it. Web development, this, let me buy it. Unity, this, buy it. This thing, buy it. It was party on the roof. I love Udemy. If anything, if you need somebody to just woo Udemy, it's Udemy. It's me. It's Udemy. I love Udemy. So yeah. Anyways, Udemy is great. And then there's Coursera. So Coursera, love her. Never really used her. That's the business though. But Coursera partners with like universities and top like organizations, essentially to provide for example, like courses again, and you can actually get certifications. You can get certifications from Udemy courses depending on the course, but Coursera has like official certifications, and they partner with schools like Harvard and companies like Google to provide official accredited certifications. So, for example, I mean, you can put any of these on your resume, but people will just know the Coursera certifications even more. So, what does all this have to do with any of that? Yeah, invest in yourself. The only investment in this life, besides investing in your deen, obviously, and your akhirah, that you can always like get back and benefit from is investing in yourself. You will always get returns and returns and returns on that, because the knowledge you gain, you never know where it's going to benefit you. There are so many more alternatives, Udemy, Coursera, or whatever. Just try them, see what you like. But yeah, they're flexible. Some of them are free, but then you have to pay for the certification. But yeah, do your research, see what you want. There's so many options out there. Give it a go. And you have to realize too, like a lot of employers, they only benefit from their employees learning. That's why they provide these things for free. Because you might be thinking like, oh, what's the catch? They want you guys to learn things so then that way you can be better at making the money. Right? So you got to take advantage of all the opportunities. And I'm not just talking about educational opportunities. Some employers, they got self-care workshops. They got mental health, like free therapy provided by this therapy company if you use this promo code, or a gym. You got to use them. Don't just let them sit there collecting dust. You're working for people. You might as well use the benefits that comes with working for them. Like, for example, my job has like a free fitness center. Yes, I use it. Rather than paying monthly $50 to go to the gym, I can just use the fitness center and I don't have to pay a dime. You might think, okay, $50, whatever. Like, it's $50. $50 adds up, babes, okay? That $50, you know how many meals I can buy with the $50? How many Trader Joe's ice cream sandwiches I can buy with the $50? Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm gonna get my $50. Don't worry. And last but not least, well-being and self-care. You gotta prioritize, your mental, your physical, your spiritual well-being. So go ahead and use that self-care. Now, self-care does not have to be expensive. Okay. Self-care does not mean spending $100-something to go to this spa thing, or spending $200 on a haircut. Or self-care can just be getting a little clay mask, laying down, and just not doing anything for 15 minutes. I know that's self-care to me because I run around and do a lot of stuff. I don't have time, I don't make the time as I should to sit down and do nothing. But there is benefit in sitting down and doing nothing that allows your brain to process things and come up with new grand ideas. So yeah, prioritize that. That free fitness center I mentioned earlier, go ahead and use that to stay active. Again, I've mentioned it a couple times. Our bodies are a privilege. We got to take care of them. You don't have to be pumping all the iron, but what you can do is take some walks. Even if you don't got a free fitness center, take a walk outside, grab a friend, chat, go on a nature trail. If you, depending on the city you live in, like for example in Atlanta, there's always like a free yoga workshop in the park kind of thing. Or sometimes if you go out online, you can get them free Pilates classes or free kickboxing or go on Groupon. Anyways, my point is maintain a regular fitness routine. Your body will thank you 20 to 30 and frankly even 10 years from now. When one starts working, not only do we have more money, we have less time. And sometimes with that less time, we sacrifice cooking. And as a result, we eat out a lot. Please avoid this. Please protect yourself. It is hard when your friends want to go out for brunch every Sunday or have a lunch every other day or do this thing, go for ice cream. Don't get me wrong. Listen, I love food, so I'm never going to say no. But one thing I had to learn is that if I'm not going to say no, then I need to control myself when I'm going and eating this food or having this brunch or getting that ice cream. So, for example, maybe you don't want to say no because you want to see your girls, but maybe you could offer, hey, how about you come over for dinner and we'll make something? Or if you do eat out, go ahead and get the salad on the side rather than the fries, okay? I know it's hard. Me, I used to be a hater. I used to be like, why do people order salad while you're going to a restaurant? You can make salad at home. I still don't order the salad, but I get like the broccoli. I get the alternative, healthy, less carb free, whatever. Because even though it's not as tasty, I mean, sometimes broccoli can be good. So I'm not going to hate on broccoli. But, you know, even though it's tough and you really like the fries and you like the seasoning, the crispiness, again, you have to invest in your well-being and your body. And your future self is going to thank you, inshallah, for doing it and getting into those healthy habits. Or maybe, again, instead of ice cream, go for smoothies or an acai bowl, whatever those are. And if you do have trouble finding time or energy to cook and you find yourself eating out every time you go to work, please try meal planning. I was having trouble with meal planning. I'd get home, I'd be so tired, and then I also have my meetings and other things, and it just gets easier and easier to find the excuse to buy food, especially, again, when you get invited to brunch and this thing. But you have to make the effort to, like, cut down on the unnecessary stuff. Oh, speaking of, drink the water, leave the soda and the lemonade alone. That stuff sneaks up on you. And again, try to like cut down on the unnecessary things. An app I started using is this app called Jow. It's like JOW. I feel like it helped me a lot. And you can always put like your dietary restrictions. Like, for example, obviously I don't eat pork. So I cut out all the recipes with the pork. I don't like coconuts. Cut out all those things. It just gives me like 3 to 5 like meals or whatever. You can ask it how many meals to give you. And they have their like community recipes that you can just pick from, or it'll just feed them to you, which I need that because I need less of the mental burden of like, oh, what am I going to choose? Because that's part of the problem for me. It's like, now I got to choose like what I'm going to make and yada, yada. And like, it's going to take like 2 hours to make. A lot of these recipes are like 30 minutes or less, or 14 minutes, 15 minutes or less, or whatever. You can choose that as well. And I feel like it really helps me. And then when you're done, let's say if you like have a store like Kroger, it'll go ahead and take all those ingredients that you need and put all the ingredients in your cart for you at the correct portion sizes. Like if you're making it for 2 people, it puts how many tomatoes you need for all the recipes you're making for 2 people. I don't know if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. And you might be wondering, well, Hawa, what about the meat? It's not halal. Well, guess what? I take the meat out because you can customize the cart. And then whatever meat I would have hypothetically bought at Kroger or whatever, I just go and buy that at a halal store or whatever. Does that make sense? Cool. But yeah, try that out, see how it works. But yeah, you can even do it manually. But for me, I kind of need that, the lack of the mental whatever of having to choose. But yeah. All right. So that is a wrap on today's episode of Muslimahs in Motion Professional Pursuits. I hope that you guys were able to gain a lot from that, inshallah. You got to remember the clear intentions, practicing mindfulness, advocating for yourself, and nurturing your growth. These are all very important steps to achieving that balance and success in your professional and personal lives. And keep in mind, it's not going to happen tomorrow. It might not happen next week. But if you try to do this little by little, I promise you, you will see an improvement and a difference. I know I have. So inshallah, if you have any thoughts, experiences, or questions about today's topics, please reach out to me through the link in the episode description. You can literally text the show direct. I will get it. I would love to hear from you guys and perhaps share your insights in a future episodes, inshallah. So thank you for tuning in. And until next time, keep moving forward with intention and purpose. Salam and stay blessed. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Muslimahs in Motion. We hope you enjoyed it and found it valuable. If you did, please consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform and leaving us a review. It really helps others find the show. Don't forget to visit our website at hmsdev.co/MIM for more content, updates, and resources. You can also follow us on Instagram to stay connected. If you would like a direct line to the pod, perhaps leave a comment or share some career advice, feel free to leave us some fan mail and join the conversation. We may share your note in the next episodes. Just check out the description for the link. And please, don't forget our brothers and sisters in Gaza, the Congo, and Sudan. If you would like to donate, the links will be in the description below. Join us week after next for another exciting episode. Until then, take care and salam.